So this is one of my favorite lectures, you guys. Quite literally, light. It makes the photograph. Light along with composition are the two basic building blocks of photography. We're going to talk first about light, okay? Found, ambient light, then we'll go into composition. A veteran National Geographic photographer named Jim Stanfield, who gave me my break there at National Geographic magazine, used to say, "It's not the light, but where you are in it." That is so true. It really is true. It doesn't have to be high noon harsh light, of course. I often bag on harsh high noon light. I don't like it. It's really tough. Look at the shadows. But you know what? Same time of day. Look at this. Oh, well, gee, maybe it is where you are in it. Same time of day, but now we're looking straight down on that beach. Look at guys feeding seagulls. All the colors come out. Great. Isn't that something? It works, doesn't it? And you don't need a $2,000 an hour helicopter either. You can just shoot right off the roof of a building to get a look like this. In this case, light is key, but you have to look down. You can't look across, right? People wearing the colorful suits. Geez, that's nice. And that's in the worst light of the day. Would it look great at ground level? No, we just saw it didn't look great. It looked awful. The shadows are terrible. They just kill you. You know, the bottom line, we have to think about where we are in the light. It's not the light, but where you are in it. That Jim Stanfield was a very wise man. So we've got 3 lectures on light in this course. And this one's about found or ambient light. What's found or ambient light? You haven't created it. You've only found it. That's my favorite kind, where I didn't have to do any work. I want to teach you how to see and identify great light at least. In the next lecture, we'll talk about color and light intensity. And the third lecture will be about flash. Boy, do I have a lot to say about controlling the use of your flash. Along the way, we'll be rolling in more information about lenses and apertures, depth of field, shutter speeds, because it all works together as a team. How you adjust one and it affects all the others. So let's get started. Okay, this one. This is a very simple photograph of a very rare bird. This is the minutes-old chick of an Atwater's prairie chicken, a very rare bird in this country, just hatched out of its egg. You know how I lit this? How I lit this? It's a reading lamp, just a single tungsten bulb, like a reading lamp, bedside table lamp. That's it. They had this little lamp turned on in the incubator room at a place called Fossil Rim Wildlife Center, which was doing breeding with these animals in Glen Rose, Texas. I'd spent the night on the floor of the incubator room hoping to photograph the hatchings of these birds. This one's just out of the egg. There's a weak light on in the corner of the room, throwing off just the faint, warmest, graceful colored light, this golden glow. And I thought, yeah, that's good enough to shoot in. I didn't want to introduce flash, the delicate little chick. I didn't want to blast away. I just wanted something very subtle, tender, warm, caring. This light matched the delicate feel of the subject. I could see it at the moment, right? There's several things that help this photograph. It's a very simple one, but it works in a couple of ways. One is that it's a baby chick. We like those. And we get a sense of how small and fragile he is because he fits in the palm of the man's hand that's helping to raise these birds. The down's still wet. You can tell he's just out of the egg. With this very soft, almost firelight gracing this bird in his hand. The background's completely black, so there's no other distractions. That helps. Depth of field, very shallow. Just the bird's eye, that side of his face is sharp. That's it. There isn't much light in the room, so of course I have a wide open hole in the lens, wide open aperture, just enough to have enough shutter speed so things won't be blurry. We get a sharp eye. The thing is, this is a very simple photograph, but it's effective. I'm trying to tell viewers that the future of this species is in our hands, and literally it is. This species would be extinct now without captive breeding centers such as this. So for this photo anyway, mission accomplished, and it's all thanks to the light. There are 2 ways of changing and adjusting light. Adjustments in the environment and adjustments in your camera. Getting a picture well lit is about doing both. Let's talk first about adjusting the camera. 3 things to remember here. In exposure compensation, the ISO setting, and the histogram. On many cameras, there is an exposure compensation setting, just to start out, okay? Look at your manual to see where yours is if you have one. Most of the advanced cameras, they all have one. The exposure compensation dial is very handy because it's like a dimmer switch on the wall of your home. When your camera's in an automatic exposure setting, either in program, aperture priority, shutter priority, by dialing up or down on that exposure compensation dial, by adding or subtracting, it will increase or decrease the exposure or the brightness or darkness of your picture. Just like turning up and down a dimmer switch on the wall of a home. On my camera, most of the time, I dial it down a little bit, maybe 3/4 of a stop, a little bit under the optimal exposure. Why do I do that? Because the things we all photograph contain a good deal of contrast between the light and the dark areas, and I always expose for the highlights. That means I consider the brightest parts of my scene when making exposures. That way I don't overexpose anything in my pictures. I don't want the highlights in the pictures to be blown out because I can't get that lost information back. Does that make sense? So I make the entire exposure just a bit dark, underexposed, to retain some of the detail in the highlights. I do that routinely. Dark, dark, dark. That's kind of what I do. I make the whole image a little bit darker, just as when I was shooting slide film. So when I do that, not only does it make colors richer, but it also prevents me from what we call clipping out the highlights. You can bring back details in the shadows when you're shooting digital, but you can't get back detail in the highlights if they're blown out, if the camera didn't record detail because you overexposed it. Not without a tremendous amount of work and foolishness on your computer. We're trying to get it to where you don't have to mess with the computer very much. We want everything coming out of the camera to be as good looking as possible. Saves you time in front of the computer. Who needs to be in front of the computer more? Now, sometimes you'll actually want to overexpose. For example, in a snow scene. Look at the snow scene. Okay? You're going to want to overexpose for that. You don't want it to be gray. Your camera meter is going to want it to turn gray. You're going to want to think about that. Beauty of it is, look at the back of your camera, look at your histogram. You can expose this properly. You can compensate for the fact that the scene is almost all white. You can try putting your camera in manual mode if you have that setting and going up close to your subject. Check the exposure level, let's say on the face of the boy here. Check that exposure level, lock it in, move back and shoot. It's a scary thing now. You're going to be moving back and your meter's going to be going crazy saying, whoa, there's too much light. But I'm telling you, you've already gotten your exposure because you walked up close and then you step back and you shoot it. And you know, you look at the back of the camera and it's a beautiful thing. You can see whether you're blowing it out or not. It's okay. You can also try this technique if you're shooting against a black background, of course, like the mouth of a cave or a black wall or a dark forest. And always keep looking, check the back of the camera, see what you got. Now let's look at 3 pictures to see how they look when they're under, over, and properly exposed. Let's look at this. This is daughter Ellen's pet cockatiel, Jimmy, all right? So look at the difference here. What's that one look like? Does it look underexposed to you? No, not quite. Looks a little blown out, doesn't it? How about that one? Under or over? Looks a little underexposed to me. See the difference? Now look. That looks proper, okay? That looks like a proper exposure. Simple. Look at the back of the camera, look at the histogram. A lot of cameras, my camera for example, those blown out highlights will literally flash at me. If they're overexposed, if you've messed it up, they will flash at me saying, I'm overexposed, I'm overexposed. That's really handy. That's really handy. There's another exposure setting that's critical here too. ISO. We've mentioned it briefly before, but I want to take some time with it here. Most cameras have an ISO setting. The ISO is simply the sensitivity of your sensor or film, if you're still shooting film, to light. You set it in increments, 100, 200, 300, 400. 400 ISO is more sensitive to light than 100. In a dark scene, you'll want a higher ISO to make the most of whatever piddly light you have available. In a brighter scene, you're going to want a lower ISO so that you don't overexpose the picture. Now you may ask, heck, why don't I just crank it up to 2000 ISO all the time? I remember asking that at my camera store when I was first starting out with film in college. Why shoot it at 100 if I can shoot at 2000? I can keep my shutter speed nice and high, I can have a small hole in the lens, get everything in focus nice and sharp. Well, let me tell you, if you shoot with a high ISO during daylight hours, you'll overexpose your picture. All the highlights will be blown out, no matter what your hole in the lens, because there's too much light coming in for a high ISO, okay? Also, with a high ISO, you've made your sensor very sensitive to light. Look at this. Let's take a look. Okay, this is really, really typical of a high ISO image. Look at all the grain. Look at that. That's my little dog Baxter, barky thing that he is. I'm glad to be at the teaching company. He's not barking in the middle of the night, waking me up here. It's really pleasant for a change. Okay, so look at that ISO. really, really grainy, that's a very high ISO picture, probably like 5,000 or 6,400. The higher the ISO, the more noise there is. So that's the thing. That's totally the thing. You want to watch that if you can. And I hope you don't want everything in focus anyway. You've heard this before. Sometimes a really good photographer will just want one little sliver of something in focus to really make a point. We don't need the whole world to be sharp all the time, even most of the time. So I'll often purposely choose the lowest ISO I can get away with in order to blur the background somewhat and make my subject pop out. I'd suggest you try that too. You don't need everything sharp and you don't need high ISOs all the time. The quality is going to be better in a low ISO frame. It's no fun to make a large print out of something that's as noisy or grainy as that last picture you just saw of the dog. Conversely, if you shoot something on a digital camera on 100 ISO, you should be able to blow that thing up as big as a billboard and it'll hold up very, very nicely. On the back of my camera here, it goes from 200 ISO, 6400 ISO. Can you believe that? Let's check that out. 6400? Is that possible? Yeah, it is. With this camera, but this is kind of expensive. Wow. How do I change that? That's a tremendous range. I'm going from 200, wow, all the way up to 6400 ISO and beyond. And some cameras go higher than that now. 12,000, 24,000 ISO. When I started out, I was shooting 50 ISO film 25 years ago. Tremendous range. With higher end cameras, you can shoot in the dark. If you can see it, you can get it. It also allows for faster shutter speeds in low light, which might eliminate the need for a tripod or even a flash. Amazing. I used to have to carry a tripod with me constantly. I still carry one all the time, but I don't need it as often, right? High ISO, man. What do you think about this? Is this high ISO or low? Obviously, it's gonna be a low ISO because it's very bright out. Or this picture, high ISO or low? It's gonna be a high ISO. I can see a little bit of grain in the sky, but that's very late in the day. Kathy and Ellen, wife and daughter, their faces are lit up by the screen on their camera, a little pre-focus for the flash. Just lovely to be able to shoot at that time of the day. Absolutely. So ISO, are we getting it now? ISO is the sensor sensitivity to light. Simple as that. That's it. Most advanced cameras give you a way to change that ISO. Take advantage of it. We've talked now about your camera's exposure compensation setting and the ISO or light sensitivity setting. What else is there in the camera that can help? I've mentioned the camera's histogram a bit before, and they're not difficult to understand. They're very important though. Histograms are an excellent little tool that allow you to look at your pictures in graph form, at least the light that's in your picture in graph form, so that you know whether your images are under, over, or perfectly exposed. The histogram is simply a rectangular display or graph that you call up on the back of most cameras. It looks like a mountain range sometimes, so I like to say keep the mountain in the middle. Keep the peaks of information in the middle if you can. The histogram shows you whether or not you have enough meat on the bones of your exposure. The left is dark and the right is bright. Easy to remember, right is bright. If you have a few peaks in the histogram and they're all the way off to the left side, well, you know that you've underexposed the image. If, on the other hand, most of the peaks are off on the right and even touching the right side, you know that you've overexposed the image. And if you've actually touched the right and clipped off information in detail, sometimes that's okay, but most of the time, not. You know, and remember, if you've got a really dark scene, you're gonna have a lot of information on the left. You have a bright snow scene, you're gonna have information on the right. It's not necessarily good or bad, it's just interpreting this, okay? Sometimes you can get back information in that it's in shadow, by the way, but you can never get back information that you've lost because you've overexposed things. Now, naturally, if you're looking at a dark scene, again, most will be on the left. If you're in a bright scene, it's going to be on the right. The right is bright, and that's okay. That's fine. I really work, though, when I'm exposing things, I try not to touch the right side of the graph with information or overexpose the highlights anyway, because it means you've cropped out detail. You've cropped out data or information in digital. I try not also to have too little exposure on the left. Be a really dark scene, you underexpose, you get very little there to work with. I use that histogram all the time, at least when I'm starting in on a situation, especially in tricky light. Why? Because I don't really get the whole true story by looking at the image on the back of the camera. That picture that comes up, it lies sometimes. It's designed to render a really beautiful, beautiful picture, even if you're wildly under or overexposed. You have to know that. They trick you a little bit with that. That's why the histogram is a good thing to know how to read. You must do things well in your camera if you can. Otherwise, when you go to download your badly exposed images, it's crying time. You're going to think, how am I going to salvage this thing? The answer is, you don't want to have to fix your pictures later on the computer. That's where the histogram comes in. It helps you tailor your exposure. It helps you get it just where you need it. Exposure compensation, ISO, and the histogram. Those are your three really important camera settings. Now let's talk about the quality of the light you're working in. The quality, boy, I love this part. The easiest place is to start outside in natural light. And how we make the natural environment work for us. This is something I love to talk about. Most of these you can do with natural light, but a few will come off better using flash or artificial light sources. It just depends. Okay. So the first step in engaging light in a photograph is analyzing where the light's coming from and how it's relative to where the subject is. All right? Let's look at a few pictures here. Here we've got my assistant Grace, and she's going to show us the way on lighting. Okay, first off, front lighting. Simple. That's when the light's coming directly from the front. That's it. The light's behind the photographer, coming right at the subject. That's great. Okay, that's the most common way that photographers light things. We learn that when we're kids, basically. But it can also be the most boring, straight on. If the sun's low on the horizon, then that could work if there's nice color in the light. But if the light is harsh at all, front lighting really flattens out shadow, flattens out depth. Very few shadows, get less depth of field feeling in your picture. Okay, backlighting. This is when the lighting is coming from behind the subject. Sometimes we'd call this rim lighting or silhouette lighting because the subject often goes black, becomes a silhouette, so backlighting. Hatchet lighting. I learned this term in college. I don't know how many people use hatchet lighting, but to me hatchet lighting is as if you split the face. One side's very, very harsh and one side's very, very dark. Okay, complete shadow. Looks like somebody splitting the face with a hatchet. The brow line and the nose basically keep the light from reaching over on the other side of the person's face because the light's so far off to the side. We call it side lighting too if you want. Hatchet lighting is dramatic but tough to look at times. Okay, ghost lighting, also called Vincent Price lighting, whatever you want to call it. They use this a lot in Halloween movies, Halloween commercials. The light is coming from below. Call it chin music if you want. It's the most unattractive lighting used, known to man basically. Shooting the light straight up underneath a person's nose makes people look super creepy. And sadly, I kind of like that look. My daughter Ellen was along that day. She decided to do a little Blair Witch Hunt and do this little ghost lighting thing. She's a big fan of horror movies, okay? So next, what else? Lighting from above. I call it interrogation lighting. In the movies, if a person's being interrogated by bad cops, there's always a bulb hanging over their head and they're sitting in the middle of the room in a lone chair. It's like a light, single light coming from above, okay? It can be effective, but it has to be done well. Like if you get somebody looking up into the light, that's better than this. The brow ridge gives us a little bit more of a harsh shadow. We got assistant Rebecca here sitting underneath a single bulb in my kitchen. Look at this, very, very harsh, raccoon shadows in the eyes. This is interrogation lighting, actually. You can see the light source there, see how that's done. Not as effective. Of course, this is a harsher light because it's not in a little soft box like my flash was with Grace. But you get the idea, of course. Of course, there's zebra lighting. Actually, there's no such thing as zebra lighting. We just took Grace over by a window with a Venetian blind when we were doing this shoot. It's just a weird effect, right? Let's talk about my favorite kind of light, for real. Rembrandt lighting. With Rembrandt lighting, the light is subtle and beautiful, and it's coming in from both the side and a little to the front, kind of 3/4 to the subject. We have a little triangle of light there on the face opposite the light source. Rembrandt, the painter, was famous for doing this. The side of the face that is closest to the light source is fully lit. But you have this other side of the light of the face that's mostly dark, this little bitty kiss of light on that side, just past the bridge of the nose. It's really effective because it's the shadows that give our pictures depth and richness. I really like that look. You can probably see that I always like to think about ways to vary ambient light. Ambient light is infinite, and so it's very exciting to me. I never get tired of this. There are a lot of ways. Sometimes it's as simple as opening or closing a door or drapes. Sometimes Believe it or not, it's as simple as removing a floorboard, which is not simple. But in this case, let's look at a few pictures here. This is my friend Bo helping me out in a barn. We're taking the floor out of a barn to put in a staircase. There's a subtle difference here, but it's very important. I want to talk about the variation of light. Okay, so in this first picture, look at this. Bo's face, somewhat lit, but his arm's a little brighter. Now watch this. He's going to pry this floorboard up, and look at that. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. It's because the light's bouncing off the barn floor down below. The sun is. This is just indirect, reflected light. Look at how well his face is lit up there, and his body goes soft. I really like that. It looks like a painting. His face really pops out. It helps tremendously, tremendously. Think about this, that the background is dark. We've got light bouncing off the first floor, coming up, kicking through that hole he's just made, and lighting him up beautifully, just beautifully. It was just a matter, really, of waiting patiently till he got enough boards up and leaned closer to the hole. Let me show you how this came about. We started out, I'm working the scene. I'm just working it, thinking about how to show this, because this is an old historic barn. We're putting this floor in. My friend Charles is helping him. There we go, sawing a little hole in the floor. All right, so I'm just working with whatever light's kind of spilling in from above. Getting ready to pry up the floorboards. When he pried that first one up, though, I was like, holy cow. I should pick a spot and wait for the direction the light looks best, and shoot in that direction. I tried from down below, right? Well, it's fine, he's getting lit, but really, it was this thing right at the end, where the light's just really, really sweet. I'm always looking for light that looks like a painting. How about that? So what else? What else? Let's look at a couple more pictures. My boy out at Leech Lake, Minnesota, Spencer. Here he's probably 7 years old or so. We go to vacation there every year with my wife's family. I start out with a very underlit frame in a way. He's looking away from the light. The exposure's actually right. It's okay. It's very late in the day after the sun is set, or just as it's setting, but I need to improve things. So it is exposed well, but look, he's totally in the shadow. Maybe that's the look you want. I don't know. But in this next one, I've moved a little bit, and he has too. A little bit better. Wish his finger wasn't up his nose. Let's turn a little bit. On this third one, there you go. Same scene, same time. Why does this one work better? Because he turned into the light. I haven't moved much. I'm using that lake as a nice background, but his face is illuminated. The back of his shirt is now dark. We don't need to see the back of his shirt. I wanted to see his face. I wanted to know how he looks at this point in time. That's the opposite of how we were 2 frames earlier. Nice clean background, very subtle light, good time of the day, and he is quiet and content. That's it. It's very simple. It's just a matter of him spinning around, waiting for him to spin around, or in this case, bribing him with ice cream to get him to turn around. So subtle light. Let's talk about subtle light. It's better than harsh. And believe it or not, you can have harsh light right at sunset. I'm always bragging about sunset light, but look at this first photo. Look at that. Really, really quite harsh, isn't it? Taken just moments before sunset. And yet it has a very direct feel, very harsh. The last few moments of sunlight, and look at how harsh this is. It's almost as harsh as the middle of the day with that exposure, right? The shadows are very long. The shadows are very harsh on people's faces. They're squinting. Their expressions aren't as natural. Now let's look. Step forward in time a few minutes. Now we're talking. The sun is set. We're relaxed. The shadows, those harsh shadows are gone. And now we've got this nice, soft, even light. I'm watching my sky. I don't have a lot of sky coming out of anything, just a hint of it there to blow. It's not going to blow out on me. Dark trees, dark cabin. Everything is easier to look at in this nice, soft glow after the sunset, in my opinion. On the one we harshly lit, we lost the shadow detail. But in soft light, we get good shadow detail here. So my advice, wait for it. Be patient and wait. Try different things. Sometimes the ambient light will vary itself and solve your problems for you. How nice is that? That's great. Best loved light, the kind of light that I love and most people don't think to shoot in, is gray light. Gray light on an overcast day. Most people put their cameras away when the light gets gray. I like to take the camera out, believe it or not. Gray light can be lovely. One of the things to think about is that not all gray skies are created equal. Your eye sees this gray cloud on the horizon, so you naturally shoot your subject towards that horizon. But I'm telling you, sometimes a gray sky can blow out white completely. Depends on how dark that cloud is and where the light's coming from. Remember, the sky is a big light source. It's like a big light dome out there. So it really varies. It really varies. Where's the sun? Some days, yes, the sky is thinner in one spot than it is somewhere else, and you've got a nice dark gray background if you look in a certain direction like that, right? A lot of days, however, you can have an overcast day and it'll just blow out. It'll be really bright. Your camera meter will make a silhouette out of whatever you try to put in front of your subject. Look at the difference here. Blowing that out, silhouette-y. Now we're looking a different direction. Now we've got some detail. Or this, my friend Charles up a tree, blown out. We're going up at what looked to be a very dark gray sky, but the camera sees that as the light source, and that's white, and it'll underexpose everything that's not clouds. Clouds are exposed right. Everything else goes silhouette. Same here. Offloading gear onto a beach, the camera's reading the scene, and it underexposes or silhouettes our subject. You really have to watch this. It's a common mistake you learn by exposing lots and lots of pictures. Okay, so what do you need to do really? You need to get a little higher up and shoot down on a gray day to eliminate the sky. I do that all the time. I'm constantly getting up to look down to lose that gray sky if it looks like it's blowing out on me. A couple more frames just to illustrate that. This is a gray day in New York City. This is just out my hotel room, looking down. No hint of that sky. I use buildings, I use trees to block the sky all the time. This is a gray day, actually quite a gray day on Times Square. I'm using buildings and billboards to block the sky. So you can even throw a little flash in there to help your subject balance out with the sky. You could do that. I try that all the time, pop a little flash. This last one though, flash, it's a little tricky, and we'll talk more about that in a future lecture. You know, I also love found lighting, the light that happens indoors. The sky could be blazing bright outside or dark as can be, but you get this nice glow on everything if you go by a window on a bright sunny day. Let's take a look. Look at this. A bright sunny day, you get inside and the sun is, look at this, you get this nice look. Beautiful look. Same here. The light's coming in, you have this beautiful color, little beams of light shooting in. Is this overexposed? Yeah, it's probably going to be flashing on my camera. On my histogram, it's probably going to be clipped. But my exposure is good here, and I like the scene, and sometimes it's okay to clip highlights. Sometimes it is. The first rule is there are no rules. Expose it the way you like it. Really, it depends on the time of the year, whether there's trees blocking things, where your house sits. Generally, though, I just shoot what I like, and I'm looking for that light all the time. I'm working with things all the time, and I'm ready. I'm ready for it. Now look at this. This breaks all the rules. That is totally blown out. There's no detail in that. I couldn't get detail back if I paid for it, right? But it's okay because I'm allowing that washout, that highlight area to just blow out so I can concentrate here. Because those curtains were striped and there's trees and messes outside. I don't want to see the backyard. Just let it blow out. I'm exposing here and I let the white become a nice smooth background. I don't do that often. But I'm ready. I'm thinking about it. Think about what you want to shoot. Always think about it if you can. So another example from a vacation, again up at Leech Lake, Minnesota. We go there every summer. Another example here. Again, the window's blown out, but I love the red light, the last light of the day. She's gotten out of the shower. She has a towel on her head. She's looking out to see if her cousins are playing outside. I ask her to look at me for a second. Cole's finishing his dinner. The window's blown out. I don't really care about that too much though. I couldn't avoid it. And I love this almost Rembrandtish thing she has going on with the light. It's subtle. It's a nice record of my daughter at age 14. And man, you cannot beat that late light like that. Gee whiz, that's tough. Now, you don't have to be having direct beams of light coming through an open window. Really, you can get bounced or reflected light, which is light that's really reflected nicely off something nearby. It can be something sophisticated like a reflector or something as simple as a dirt floor or a white wall. Take a look at this. My friends Clark and Lisa DeVries, very good friends of mine. This is just in their bedroom. Thanksgiving, just took them aside, did a nice portrait of them at this age in their 40s. And it's just bounced light, very soft light. It was a sunny day, middle of the day, but just very subtle. Very subtle. And they're happy and they're young and they're always this age in this picture. That's what I love about still photography. It freezes time. They're always going to be healthy and happy and in love in that picture. Love it. Nice, clean background that's just in their bedroom, in the corner of a bedroom, right? There's this wonderful variety you can get using found light, ambient light. Remember, as light bounces and reflects, it picks up colors wonderfully. It picks up colors. Love that. Love that. Here's another thing. This is just bouncing light around real late in the day. My parents, their house is actually tan, but the light shifted blue so late in the day. And they're yellow because they're washing their dishes, and that kind of glows them up yellow, and you can really read them there. You can really see them there. So I really like that, just that feel. And we've just had a nice meal, and my mom's putting up with me taking her picture, which she generally doesn't. By the way, you know, this house, I've shot so much in this house. I've shot my dad especially. He still considers me to be a man without a job. In fact, he's constantly saying to me, why don't you get a good job down at the college? There's a guy offered you a job down at the college, right? And I said, Dad, that guy's been dead from cancer for 10 years. I don't think I'm going to get a job down at the college. And he says, well, you know, if you were me, you work a steady job for 30 years. I got 5 checks coming in right now, 5 checks. I'm like, fantastic, Dad, but I do think I have a job. I work for National Geographic. And he's like, I don't know, you're freelance, son. You're freelance. You're a man without a job if you're freelance. Okay. Anyway, great guy though, great guy. Outdoors again. I want to stress that the warm glow after sunset is really hard to beat. It's beautiful. The sun's been down maybe 10, 15 minutes. Right there at my folks' house as it sets, it gets warmer and warmer and more pink, and then it just vanishes. And all the colors vanish at some point, just by magic. And this is why when someone shows me a picture of a landscape that was shot in the middle of the day, I say, what were you thinking? Why didn't you wait until the light gets good? A lot of people show me pictures of cemeteries shot in lousy light. I'm thinking, geez, the cemetery's not going anywhere. Nothing's going to change. Wait till the sun sets. Why not wait till the end of the day when the light's great? Huh? That's what I did with this field crew out from the Great Courses back in Nebraska. We scoped out a location, a little pond behind a farmhouse, to see when we thought the light would be best. What light would be best? And then watch what we did here. I'm going to ask you to do something similar to this in this lecture's assignment. Watch this. Okay, so rural landscapes, here's another great scene. We've got a little pond and a rowboat. It's nice, it's idyllic. The fixins are all here for a very beautiful picture, but you know, the light, it's all about the light. You have to have great light to make a great landscape, in my opinion. I came out here very early this morning. It was kind of foggy and moody, but I don't know. And now I'm checking it throughout the day. In fact, I'll take a picture right now just to see how it looks. But I know in advance it's not going to look great. Yeah. Well, I mean, the light's very, very harsh right now. Really tough. So I'm going to come back later on in the day, maybe even towards sunset, just see what I can get as far as reflectivity, maybe a silhouette, maybe a person or two out in that boat. Really make it sing. Remember, there's no excuse for bad light in the landscape. The landscape's not going anywhere. So let's just wait a few hours. Wait till the light tames down, calms down a little bit. We'll try it again then. Okay, so it's almost sunset and we're back at the pond and the light has tamed down some. I'm going to take a picture. And I'm looking at the back of the camera and it has tamed down indeed, but something I didn't anticipate. As the sun's setting, the trees, there's a few trees blocking the light on this end of the pond. The end that I've been scouting out all day, waiting for this. But I see it's lit on the other side. There's light over there. So sometimes you just have to adjust and be flexible. I think we should go to the other side. So come on, follow me. Okay, so look what's happened. We've come to the other side of the pond and, I mean, it's magic. The sun forced me over here. The other side of the pond was dark. That's the side I was scouting all day. But look, we're over here. The light is great and we have great reflections. We can see the buildings in the water. We see farm buildings. The landscape rolls away. There's a lot of interest here. This is a much better side. I should have been looking at this side all the time. I should have done what I preach. I should have walked 360 degrees around this pond and seen what was on the other side. Well, now the sun has led me here and it's a beautiful scene. I think I'm going to take a picture, obviously. Take a couple maybe. One from up here, normal. One from down low, a worm's eye view as we say. And it's really nice. The boat gives us our leading line into the scene. We've got our buildings back there. There's reflectivity on the water. It's all these things we've been thinking about, you know, just near-far perspective and depth of field and getting a feeling for a place and having everything pretty much sharp. Got a pretty high aperture, small hole in the lens. I don't know how we could beat this, really. So it's very satisfying. I've waited for the light to calm down. I've waited for good light. I've thought about where to be in that good light, and it works out. It's really that simple if we just think about it a little bit. We have to put some time into it, sure, but it is that simple. Now that I've said that, though, I would say once you think you've got the shot, put in another card and shoot that too, and really try to go beyond the obvious. So what's beyond the obvious? I don't know, let's play with it and let's have fun. Who knows what you'll get? Okay, so to go beyond the obvious, to liven things up, I love having people in the scene. Got my son Spencer and our friend Emma there in the boat out on the pond, and it's really lovely. There's great reflections. They're having fun. Aren't you guys having fun? Sure. And you know what? It kind of completes the scene for me. It shows us how big or small the pond is. It really gives us a nice feel. The grasses are lit along the tops. They're lit. And you know what? Even after the sun has set, we're going to continue to get that nice reflectivity off the surface of the water. They'll stand out eventually even as a bit of a silhouette if you're at the right angle. So let me work this just a bit. You can splash around, Spencer, all you want. I mean, low angle looks good. A little bit higher up looks good though, because I want Emma's head within the pond. Once I go down too low, her head's up in those weeds. I don't want to see that. I want her in that nice clean pond surface. You guys paddle around and have fun. Thanks for holding still. So anyway, I mean, this is really nice. I thought I had a nice picture before. It's even nicer with people in the boat. So that's it. Like I said, go beyond the obvious, try something new and different, and most of all, have fun. That's what this is all about. So it really is about having fun, folks. Don't you think putting people in the scene really made a difference? I sure do. So here's your assignment. Do what I did in the video. Pick a nice sunny day. Start early and shoot 5 shots of the same subject. Shoot as early in the day as possible, high noon, late afternoon, before sunset, after sunset, and then compare. The point is to watch what the light does to one subject in one place at different times of the day. Also, remember, take that walk around your subject in different light. And then once the light is good, do something to go beyond the obvious. I always like to bring people in, but you don't have to do that. You can bring in a surprising object if you like, or a pet, or whatever you like. Give us a surprise, something interesting in that really good light. So we've got a good idea of the sort of light we can find around us, both outside and indoors. It's light that we haven't manipulated or changed. It just pours down on us and our subject. What a blessing. The important point is to pay attention to the way it's interacting with your subject. Is it above them, behind them, to the side? Is it harsh, soft? Remember your exposure settings and your ISO settings on your camera. So now, let's move on to more light, the color of light and intensity. Don't go away.